Hello there, Homeschool Nolan here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. Today I'd like to talk about teaching our kids about climate change. There's perhaps no topic more top of mind today among young people than climate change. When I was a kid growing up way back in the 80s during the Cold War, we were worried about possibly being blown up in a nuclear war. Today, it seems like the biggest existential threat young people worry about today is climate change and whether the Earth will even be livable by the time they grow up. Our kids are growing up in a world where climate change will likely continue to be an ever-increasing concern around the world. With that, teaching about and equipping our young people on how to deal with climate change should be an important part of every young person's curriculum today. But where to start? There's so much information out there about climate change that it can be overwhelming trying to figure out where to start, particularly with younger kids. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, you probably know that I've been a fan of the Who HQ series for teaching kids history. I never thought, though, that they could be also a good resource for teaching science, until I noticed they also have this title, What is Climate Change? After having both me and my 9-year-old read it, I found this book to be a pretty good introduction for both kids and adults to a very complex and sometimes polarizing topic. And based on this book, what I like to do now is do my best to summarize this complex topic. So what is climate change? Well, climate change is long-term changes in both temperature and weather patterns on Earth. It's always been happening on this planet, but since the 1800s, when human beings began to industrialize, there was strong evidence indicating that human beings are now the main driver of climate change. Now, how much climate change are we actually talking about? Well, up in the Arctic, the temperature has risen about 3 degrees centigrade since 1900, causing the polar ice cover to begin to shrink. Other data shows that the average temperature around the world has gone up about 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880. Now, that may not seem like much, but this can eventually cause ice in northern regions to melt into the sea and causing sea levels to rise and also cause more heat waves around the world. More intense hurricanes and floods in recent years have all been attributed to climate change. So how are human beings contributing to this climate change? Well, global warming is caused by greenhouse gases trapped in our atmosphere, particularly carbon dioxide and methane. These gases are created and released into the atmosphere whenever human beings burn fossil fuels like coal, crude oil, and natural gas. And according to this book, 97% of climate scientists today agree that human beings are definitely contributing to climate change. But while the science seems clear, climate change and global warming often triggers fierce debate, and many people disagree on what to do about it. Now, on one end, you have what many people call the climate alarmists, people who believe that human beings have at most 12 years or so left before climate change causes the Earth to become unlivable. On the other end, you have so-called climate deniers, who believe that the entire idea of climate change is just a hoax and we have nothing to worry about. Now, most people are somewhere in between. But why is there such a wide range of opinions in the first place? From what I can gather, while most scientists and reasonable people agree that the Earth's temperature is rising and that it is being caused by human activity, there are different opinions on how we should prioritize climate change compared to all the problems human beings face. Problems such as poverty, hunger, and disease. Addressing these other problems all require energy. Energy to grow food, produce medicines, and transporting all types of goods to all types of people who need them. As of today, about 80% of the energy human beings use still come from burning fossil fuels. So it's not so easy to simply ask everyone to reduce their fossil fuel usage. While renewable energy sources such as wind and solar are cleaner, they don't yet provide nearly enough energy to completely replace fossil fuels. Hence, reducing fossil fuel consumption to fight climate change would require almost everyone to make at least some sacrifice in their current standard of living. And the costs of fighting climate change are not evenly distributed. Poor people in poorer countries who can't afford electric cars and solar panels are much more dependent on fossil fuels for their daily survival, and they would definitely be hit much harder by any effort to reduce fossil fuel consumption. Yet, if global warming does indeed represent an existential threat to the survival of our planet, shouldn't we still ask everyone to at least make some sacrifice? Now, my goal in this video is not to convince you which side is right. What I'd like to do instead is suggest an approach to teaching climate change and preparing our kids so that they can make their own judgment and decide how they will deal with this complex issue as they grow up. Now, for younger kids, say until age 10 or 11, I think books like this by Who HQ are a good start. But for older kids in their teenage years, you can start studying climate change more rigorously. And climate change relies on multiple other sciences. The first of which is data science. Data science is all about extracting knowledge and insights from massive amounts of data using modern high-performance computing. It is the job of climate scientists to figure out what has and what will happen to our Earth based on large volumes of data taken over long periods of time. Both sides in any climate change debate use numbers and stats on temperatures, sea levels, and even deaths from all over the world to prove their point. With data science, a good climate scientist can construct mathematical models to try to predict what will happen in the future. But those models are only as good as assumptions made based on the data. Related to data science is statistics. Statistics is all about collecting and interpreting quantitative data. Before I go further, I'm reminded of a joke from my speech and debate days in high school where one of my teammates used to remark that statistics are like a bikini. While revealing, what they hide are the essentials. So while statistics on climate change can be revealing, they may also hide other important facts. For example, there are plenty of numbers out there that show that global warming is creating more heat waves, and more people are dying from these heat waves. But what also might be happening as the Earth warms up is that we now also have fewer cold waves with extreme cold temperatures that can kill people too. So that begs the question, overall, are there more or less people dying from global warming? That's something a good data scientist using statistics can find out. In short, climate science relies on collecting and analyzing large amounts of the right kinds of data. And studying data science along with statistics is a great way to prepare to become a climate scientist. But perhaps the most important subject kids can start studying today with respect to climate change is chemistry. Chemistry is about how different types of elements and compounds change, absorb, and release energy when they interact with each other. And climate change is merely chemistry, as it is caused by certain compounds interacting and absorbing energy in our atmosphere. So understanding chemistry is key to really understanding global warming and climate change. But perhaps most importantly, the only way humans can ever move completely off fossil fuels without having to revert back to the Stone Age is by developing new and innovative sources of energy. And this will require scientists who are talented in many areas, especially chemistry. So if your child or student is determined to make a positive difference in mitigating global warming, encourage them to study chemistry. Before I conclude, There is one more way parents and teachers can better equip their students to tackle climate change. And that is simply by setting a good example. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I have a friend in Australia who frequently likes to send me articles highlighting how serious a problem climate change is. My friend, though, also happens to be a self-proclaimed global citizen who enjoys flying around the globe to countries in Asia and Europe. So I have jokingly asked him, if he's so concerned about climate change, why doesn't he instead reduce his carbon footprint by sailing to these countries on a sailboat rather than flying to them on jet airplanes that burn fossil fuels? Not surprisingly, he dismissed my idea. But in all seriousness, his own lifestyle demonstrates how easy it is to share alarms about climate change, but also at the same time how hard it is to actually change our own lifestyles to reduce our own individual fossil fuel consumptions. But if we want the next generation to take climate change more seriously, it helps if we adults try to set a good example whenever we can. I personally now try to take the bus and mass transit instead of driving my own car whenever possible. I also tell my son to try to avoid drinking from these plastic water bottles that are produced by fossil fuels except in emergencies. Now, I have no delusions that my tiny gestures will save the planet, but it's a reminder to me that part of being a good teacher and parent is to set a good example whenever you can. So, regardless of where you may stand on the issue of climate change, I think every parent and teacher owes it to their students in this day and age to teach them about climate change. We should teach them not just what we think, but what other people think on this topic as well. And we should encourage them to study data science, statistics, and chemistry so that they will be able to draw intelligent conclusions on their own and maybe even search for new solutions. If we do this well, then perhaps one day one of our children will discover new, cleaner, and more efficient sources of energy that can save our planet. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.